All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And I'm Stan.
And we're coming in a little late this week, but we are going to be talking about all the other RPGs announced at E3. We are going to be skipping Koch Media, and we're going to be skipping Square Enix, because last week we talked about Square Enix, and there's some indie showcases that we're going to skip as well. And that's mostly because during the consolidation of the RPGs, man, there's a lot of them. So we skipped, that's why we're skipping the indie ones, Koch Media ones, and then we devoted a whole episode last week to Square Enix. So we're going to be focusing mostly on the Summer Game Fest, the Xbox presentation or Microsoft presentation, which includes Bethesda, and then also the Nintendo E3. And then there's one game from Ubisoft that we're going to be talking about as well. So that'll be the full episode for this week, but we're going to try to hit as many as we can. So it should be pretty exciting. So let's just go ahead and jump into it because we got a lot to get to here. And for the first line of games that we're going to be talking about, it's from the Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest. Now, I don't know if you guys watched this presentation, but during work, I sat there and let it play on my computer screen on the other monitor, and it was a sleigh fest in terms of just, my God, this is way too long. It was an hour and 45 minutes long. At one point, he took a break for us to watch Weezer, the band Weezer, play a song, which I really felt that Weezer was his 88th pick. I'm not sure that would have been his first. And at what point do you stop and say, maybe we just won't have a band? Because Weezer has not been something that's been that popular in a very long time. But anyways, they played a song, and there was a orchestra that also played a song from a Sonic game, not any of the known Sonic games. It was from, I think it was Sonic Outbreak, one of the songs from there that nobody in the chat knew what song that was.
No, I've never even heard of Sonic Outbreak.
Yeah, it was very obscure. And so when we heard that, Sonic was going to be coming to the presentation, the chat all thought, Green Zone, something from, the big Sonic games, very recognizable. But no, it was apparently a Sonic song that nobody had actually heard of, except maybe a minor few hardcore Sonic fans. So it was a very strange presentation. The segments lasted way too long, but there were some big announcements there. So let's jump into the first one that I want to talk about here, and that's going to be Tales of Arise. Now, this wasn't an announcement that was new. We've known about Tales of Arise for a long time now. If you guys remember, last year the game was supposed to come out, or is anticipated to come out, but they actually delayed it until 2021. And we were kind of concerned with what was going on there. We knew that they were developing it on Unreal Engine, and this was the first time they were doing that with the Tales game. Previously, they were using their own internal engine. So we thought maybe there might be some developer problems. But now that the game's been announced, it's coming out. It's got a release date of September, was it 12th? I think it is. September 10th, and it's coming to all platforms. We got a lot of footage to look at, a lot of gameplay to look at, and it's pretty exciting. It's going to be running at 60 FPS. It's promising 4K visuals. Obviously, this is for the next-gen consoles. It's still going to come out on the PS4 and Xbox, and those will be your standard fare for what you expect, probably 1080p and 30 FPS. So just expect, but this is a big deal. I mean, if you guys see the trailer, it's a major leap forward compared to prior entries. For example, Tales of Berseria, that was a PS3 game in Japan, and then they just upscaled it for PS4. So this is a wild leap in visuals. And so it's a pretty big deal. A lot of people are really excited about it. And just a cute few other tiny little things I want to touch on here before we just discuss this further that I found online. The cutscenes are being developed by an anime developer called UFO Table. And apparently, I mean, they're well known, I guess. I'm not a big anime fan, but they've done a lot of anime and a lot of game cutscenes and stuff like that since the early 2000s. They recently have been charged with tax evasion. And they owe currently $1.3 million, but it's still going on. And so I don't know what the size of the company is, but
Hmm.
they're making public apologies, they're firing lots of people, and
Ouch.
this they're doing the cutscenes for Tales of Arise. They've already done them, they've already completed them.
Hmm.
So it's possible this may be the last ride for this company.
Hmm.
I don't know for sure, but I thought that was kind of interesting that, oh man, this might be the unintentional final note for UFO Table.
Yeah, I know that they've done the cutscenes for some Tales games in the past, like especially like the opening cutscene with for Tales games is always like a very like high production anime kind of collage, I guess, of scenes from the game. And the one they did for Tales of Zillia is like really impressive. I like that one. So
Yeah,
if you're
they
not familiar, you can look that up on YouTube. It's the Tales of Zillia opening is like very colorful and very
mhm.
very cool.
Yeah, let's just jump into this because there's some gameplay stuff we can get into and stuff that they've talked about, but basically, there's been a lot of trailers that have been announced. We know we now have a release date; it's fairly soon. And touching on your point, Stan, about the cutscenes, I haven't played all the Tales games, but that's one thing that's really stood out to me is they they spend money on these cutscenes. Like they literally feel like it's straight from an anime. They're very high quality, and it's been a little awkward in the past when you would play these games and they would have these great looking cutscenes. It's like almost like a film, an animated film. And then it'll go back to gameplay and it's like, oh, like it didn't really match the quality of the cutscene. And
Right.
it seems like from the trailer and the gameplay that we've seen for Tales of Arise now, it looks like, that gameplay is looking more of the same caliber, same quality as the cutscenes, or obviously they look different, but I mean, the visually, it doesn't feel like, okay, here's like top of its class animation, and then now it's like PS3 gameplay on a PS4. Now it actually looks like it belongs together. There's not that contrast.
Yeah, that disparity
Right.
between the graphics. That's true.
So I'm really excited about that.
I think this is a great step forward for in terms of within the Tale series. Like this is the jump that it needs to differentiate itself from its previous generation. Going to Unreal Engine 4 was a really good choice. The character designs look really good. Um, I do like the aesthetic design of the characters. Having said that,
Oh,
um,
what are you gonna say?
I it still looks like like a kind of an earlier PS4 game to
What?
me.
Have you seen the newer trailers?
I have seen it there too. I just watch it right now.
Oh
It
man,
looks
I think it
good.
looks great.
I think the aesthetics really help it, but I think actually their biggest competition is themselves. I
Okay.
don't know if you guys have seen Scarlet Nexus yet,
Oh yeah. Yeah,
but
but
Oh,
that
that
game looks, I mean, now granted, Scarlet Nexus is probably in development after Arise, but I think this Tales game is probably going to be really good. But I think the next one that comes out, I don't think they can keep themselves in a stagnant position like they did with the Tales games beforehand, where they kept a similar looking formula to each one. I
right.
think if this one turns out being really good, then they have to uphold to the standard that's more akin to Scarlet Nexus than
see,
simply going forward. Now, granted, like I said, it's a good looking game. The characters are well designed. The cinematography looks great. Everything looks like it's there for a good JRPG. But if you're telling me if it truly meets modern standard, I'm gonna say almost there, but not quite there.
Like not quite AAA level, right? But not but definitely better looking than like the Legend of Heroes games, for example, the Cold Steel games. Like
Oh yeah,
it's definitely like a full step ahead of that. And
Tails looks miles better than that.
yeah, yeah, because
But
that's lower budget
I guess to me, I
stuff.
don't
Yeah.
mean like when I say it looks really good, I don't mean it looks really good in terms of cyberpunk.
Right.
I think to me it looks really good compared to Berseria. It looks way better, I think.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, like with Berseria, the level design was very restricted, and even then it was kind of bland. And Eric, like you were talking about with the aesthetic, I mean, just walking through and running through these hills there's actual gameplay 30 minutes long online that you can see. Some of the 30 minutes that people upload is like really kind of like, did you record this with a $20 capture card? Because it doesn't look as good as some of the like IGN stuff I've seen, but it looks really. They've done a lot of work with it. It's got all these beautiful vistas with all these various lighting effects, and even the character models themselves. Like if you look at the faces, there's a lot more shadow effects and a lot more nuanced in like the facial expressions that I think looks really, really good. So I think they've done a lot of work on it. I think it looks fantastic. Obviously, it is Unreal 4 and games are being developed on Unreal 5 right now. So it's
Mhm.
not going to be, as impressive as those other games. But I mean, this is like huge leap forward, I thought personally. But I do agree with you that it's not, next gen looking. But I think as far as JRPGs go, I mean, this looks about as good as a lot of
Yeah.
them, except maybe Final Fantasy, which is always absurd.
Yeah.
Where the next Tales game, what I want to see from them, like they have better character designs than Scarlet Nexus, of course,
Yeah.
but games like Scarlet Nexus, Guilty Gear Strive, Dragon Ball Fighters, they have pretty much hit um that anime aesthetic look.
Hmm.
Like they're pretty much just almost there, to the point that you could even argue they are there. And the next Tales game, I want to see if they can hit that border also.
Yeah.
Like this one, like this game looks like, I'm not knocking necessarily the Tales game itself. There's a lot good going for it. It's aesthetically pleasing and everything like that. It still just looks 3D anime.
Sure.
Uh,
Okay.
if
So
I could put it like that, because the
there's,
Tales series is, if you could tell from Berseria also, they're clearly trying to hit as close to looking like their anime cutscenes as possible
that's fair.
with a
Yeah.
3D engine. So
Hmm.
that's just what I want to see in the next game.
Yeah.
But this one looks amazing. So
Yeah. I
in its
agree.
own right.
And I also have to point out that I really like that they're continuing on with adult age cast members. You could argue some of them might be 16 or 17, but I have yet to see a 5-year-old running around with a staff or anything like that that's joined the party. And I like that they're doing that because it's growingly, increasingly popular to have these little child characters in JRPGs. I feel like we're starting to drift away from that a little bit, but still a lot of JRPGs are doing that. And I hate that. It just takes me out of the immersion completely. So
Now give them a chance. These characters could be 13 to 15 years old.
that's true. That's true.
I mean, Final Fantasy 8, they all look like they're in their mid 20s and they're all 16 to 18 years old.
High
Yeah.
schoolers. Yeah.
That's true. And the book itself, they might be in like little handbook or whatever. I guess that's not going to come with the game, but you know what I mean. On the website, it might say they're 15 years old. That's true. But at least physically, they don't look that way. So I do like that.
Yeah.
And also like the battle system. I've complained a lot about Tales of Berseria in particular, how I like the story in that game, but the battle system was just laughably easy. And, because they made it too easy in order to like make it accessible to fans. And people that have previewed this have said that this is the best Tales battle system yet, that the challenge is there and that they didn't hold back at all. They've really refined it down. There's a lot of interactivity between switching between the characters. And what they did do to make it more accessible is they just like basically gave an easy option. If it's just not, they said dodging is a critical mechanic in this version, in this game. And so they implemented an auto dodge maneuver for easy, if that's something that you want, if you just want to play a story mode. So apparently the combat's on point. Now this is early previews. These might be giant Tales fans that are just, they'll love anything that comes out Tales. But so far, early playthroughs of this, it's getting good reviews in the combat department. And I think that's really exciting.
This is pretty much
Yeah.
where I wanted the combat to go. I just wanted it to get more in touch with its action side than trying to throw some kind of complicated RPG like mechanic into it. They've just pretty much have focused more on the action side and making it more doing a more simple but deep system
Yeah.
with it. And I'm really glad they found a way to not only take it back but push it forward at the same time. Like taking it back to more simple roots, but making it a lot more deeper and more engaging at the same time is how I see it, and how a lot of people are putting it also. So I'm really excited to actually get my hands on and learning it.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I've seen of the gameplay, which there's now been a like quite a bit of gameplay that we've seen recently. It looks really good. I like that there's a you can kind of seamlessly change characters
Mm.
just mid battle. That's really nice. And then also when you contact an enemy on the field, it kind of you go to kind of like a preset like space like battle arena for that area, and then you fight the enemies because in I haven't played Berseria, but I so I'm not sure how it's handled there. But in Zestiria, they tried to have kind of the battles be seamless. Like you would contact an enemy on the map, and then you would go into you would just fight the enemy right there as is.
Hmm.
And in certain areas where you were like going through a hallway or like in a small space, it was just a disaster with the camera was like you couldn't get the camera at a good angle for your characters like in a cramped environment. So this seems like a much better approach. So it's not seamless. There is like a very small loading screen to get you into the battle area,
Right.
but it just they couldn't make it seamless in the last time where they tried that, and so this is a better, safer approach that I think is going to avoid a lot of frustration and
And
issues with
those,
like a camera.
yeah, and those tight corridors. Yeah, it's a good point. I didn't even think of that. They did mention, the developers did mention that they've spent a lot of time trying to cut down on some of those transition sequences or some of the things that slow down the game.
Hmm.
But I think that they recognized in that moment, like, okay, it's better to have a little transition, especially if you're going to be playing on a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, with like basically no load time, then
Hmm.
I think it's less of an issue and they can just prioritize those big areas as opposed to, maybe that might have been more of a consideration with Zesteria, where you don't have as fast of a system to be able to load that. So that's a good
Yeah,
point.
I do have one. I can't really call it a criticism, but just kind of like a
I've
little
got one too.
disappointing
Yeah.
thing.
Go ahead.
There's no multiplayer of any kind in
Oh,
this
I don't
Tales
care
game.
about that.
No co-op. So I'm someone who liked to play the game with friends and family. Like we would play through the Tales games,
Okay.
and I'm not gonna be able to do that with this one. I can't really call it a criticism though because it's not. That they're just not going for that with this game. They wanted it to be a single player experience from the beginning, and this is such a different battle system or different take on the. I can't really blame them too hard for cutting out something that probably a big portion of the fan base doesn't care about. To be honest,
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm in the minority in wanting there to be multiplayer. So it's disappointing for me personally, but at the same time, it's like, well, they wanted to focus on what was important and really refine the combat. So
Yeah. I mean,
maybe a future one they'll bring back the local multiplayer, but for this first try at this new engine and battle system, they wanted to focus on just the single player. So
yeah, I totally agree. I mean, look, they gotta prioritize the main game first, and it's unfortunate that that multiplayer is not in there. I'm sure there are more people than you think that like that and enjoy that, but at the end of the day, if they put out a good game, then I think we're all gonna forget, that multiplayer is there. Because I mean, there's lots of games we play without the multiplayer, so I get where you're coming from.
mhm.
But we're just used to, a lot of people are just used to playing it there. So my criticism is if you watch the last trailer, they're going over, they actually have dialogue, more dialogue with some of the other characters. And I don't have a problem with any of the voice actors except this one guy that comes on the screen. It's like, all right, guys, now we have a party. And I'm like, okay, that character is going to mean I'm switching to Japanese immediately. That one character. And that just drives me nuts. Like whoever, like, I don't know what it is about these like Japanese to, Western localizations, but whoever cast that voice actor, there's a voice like that in every game. And I think that they should stop doing that because when I do the Japanese dub, it might be bad acting. I don't know Japanese to know, but they at least don't sound very nasally. They sound much more, I don't know, appealing, I guess. It doesn't break my immersion. So that's one thing I don't like.
I think that they cast the characters based on like the Japanese voice, and they're like, okay, the character in Japanese is like more over the top, like more obnoxious, I guess, than the other characters.
They localize
they localize it, but they want to keep they're like, okay, so he should be over the top in English as well.
That's
and sometimes it just doesn't work.
And over the top in English is a very nasally, high pitched voice, which is just annoying.
Yeah. That's what annoys me about English dub all the time, where they emulate that. And it's like, could you stop trying to emulate it like how a Japanese person would be over the top and more try to figure out a way to utilize how a Westerner would be more over the top to make it feel more, natural in this. And every time in the anime, it's the same exact thing. You get someone that just sounds way too over the top, talks too fast, talks too loud, screams all the time for unnecessary reasons.
Yeah.
And you're always like, God, this was good until, until we heard that. I mean, I hear it so much that it's not even a deal breaker or anything, but
that's the thing. I don't know how long I'm going to have to play to get to that specific character and if he's the only one. But if I've played the game for 25 hours and then I get to that character, it's going to be a problem because I've gotten used to the other English cast, and it's like, am I going to switch midway through the game?
Right.
Because then that might be counterproductive as well, because I'm going to lose my attachment with those characters. So it's an issue, but that's my only issue as of right now. So it's the game's coming out on September 10th, though, coming to all platforms except Switch. I kind of think that this game might come to Switch down the road. Like you said, Eric, it's not like super AAA, so it's possible maybe the game could have a Switch version.
Probably, but there'll probably be a lot of compromises to make it work on there.
Sure.
Sure.
It also depends on what version of Unreal Engine 4 they built the game on, right? Because we saw with Dragon Quest, for example, it came out on PS4 first, but the version of Unreal Engine 4 they built it on was not compatible with the Switch, from what I understand. So they had to essentially remake the game in a different version of Unreal Engine 4. And if that's the case, they may not make the effort. They may be thinking more about porting the game someday to like whatever Nintendo's next console would be.
I don't know. We'll have to see. I think that Nintendo's made some updates with their software to kind of alleviate that, because that's a problem for other games as well. But I don't know that for sure. So we'll have to find out. That's a good point. I would presume that if this game coming out, 2 or 3 years after Dragon Quest, that hopefully they're not still using that ancient version of Unreal. However, I know how people are at my job. Like my IT guy gets on me all the time because like he'll look at my computer and I'll have like 28 updates that I haven't installed, and he'll just be like pulling his hair out. And I'm like, dude, I don't have time to just sit here and like hate this crap.
If it works, it works, right?
Yeah. I was like, my Excel works fine. I don't need to do any of that. But anyways, so last thing here, developers have been quoted as stating their goal for Tales of Rise is to show fans that Bandai Namco understands that the Tales franchise is important. So I guess I interpreted that as taking fan feedback with the combat and the visuals by going to Unreal or going away from their internal engine spending that money, being willing to delay the game so that it's what they want. I think
Getting
that's
rid of Hadi Obaba.
yeah, that was a concerted effort between Bandai Namco and Square. We're just gonna end this guy's career.
We'll make him think he's making a game for a few months and ditch him too.
Yeah. But anyways, so they've made a lot of changes, and I think it's going to turn out well. I'm excited for it. This doesn't look like another generic Tales game. This looks like something we can actually be excited about. So I'm looking forward to playing it. I'm going to pick it up day one. Probably play it on my PC because I have yet to get a next gen console, and I don't want to play this on my PS4 because you have those load screens and stuff, and I'm just past it. I want to play it at max frame rate. So
Yeah, I'm excited too for it. It looks like it's going in a mature in the right direction without having to scream, "I'm going to kill chaos," or I guess Berseria was a step in the mature audience also, but that may have been a little over top in itself.
yeah,
But I think this one's just like dark in the right ways.
yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah, Berseria was not a game to play with kids. Lots of arms being cut off and all sorts of crazy stuff. All right, so let's move on to an even darker game, a much darker game. Let's move on to Elden Ring. This was a surprise announcement at Jeff Keighley's Boring Fest, and it was a good way to end the show. Made me feel like, oh, good. I sat through that whole thing for something worthwhile. It was a very long trailer of Elden Ring, which, if you guys do not remember, it's the FromSoft game where they're the creators of the Souls games, Dark Souls in particular. And this was announced a couple of years ago where they said, hey, we're working on this new game and we're going to use George R. R. Martin as a writer who is from Game of Thrones. He wrote the books, worked on the show a little bit. So they consulted him to write for the game. And this was announced, I think, in 2019. And then it just kind of dissipated. We didn't really hear anything else for a long time until now. So a lot of people assumed that the game was put on the back burner, or maybe it was having trouble development issues. They just showed a trailer and it looks fantastic, I think. Let's go through some of the details we know and then we'll discuss. So the developer FromSoft has touted this game as the next evolution of the Souls genre in terms of gameplay, because they're now adopting the Souls formula into a open world format. So to beat this game and make that open world format work, they have 6 specific areas with demigods the player must defeat, but you can take on these challenges in any order. So it's going to be a big open world, but to beat the game, you're still going to go to these dungeons on the map. And so it'll still be a traditional Dark Souls type experience in that way, but they're adding additional things because it's open world. They point out that the character can now jump, they can ride on horseback. There'll be additional dungeons, secret bosses that are not required to get an end-game credit scene, but they're available to play in this open world. So they've changed the formula a lot here. It's going to be a different type of game with that Souls formula. And so that's what they mean by reinventing the Souls formula. But you play as a character who inherited a lost grace from his or her ancestors who are banished from the lands between. And specifically, George R. R. Martin's contributions to this is he wrote the world building, characters, and mythos, and he created the backstories for the main bosses. But the catch here is, similar to Dark Souls, the game will not be traditionally story driven. So Martin basically did the world building, and the game's going to have a heavy atmosphere with deep lore, but it's not really a Uncharted type narrative adventure.
Mhm.
So, like I said, this was first announced in 2019's E3, but went silent. But now we just got a trailer. Looks great. It's coming out January 21st, 2022 to all platforms except Switch. I fully anticipate it to be delayed. But what did you guys think about the trailer that was shown? Because I really liked what I saw there, but I want to hear what you guys think.
It's a day one for me.
Is it?
That game looks phenomenal. And if you've gone through George's stuff, he does a really good job world building. along with the story creation behind it. So I feel pretty confident that his contribution here is going to be like well worth it, just for everything it is. But I think, like you said, it's going to be similar to Dark Souls in that you kind of put everything together yourself. Um, like the community finds like items that, and you put together the lore and figure out everything. Uh, I'm guessing it's going to be like that again, which is really cool. I mean, that's a real
Right.
cool way to establish lore in your game, is to have people come together and figure it out together.
Yeah.
But from the trailer, everything looks great. The game looks phenomenal graphically. The combat looks solid. Um, the aesthetics of the game are real pleasing. I really like that dark, grimy Western look to it. Everything is just hitting the right chords with me. I think the only thing that tops it for me in terms of the Souls-esque genre is probably Bloodborne, uh,
Mm.
aesthetically, but this one looks like it's hitting all the right notes for me also.
Yeah, I gotta totally agree here. And I gotta be honest, I am not the biggest Souls fan. I mean, I like more narrative driven games. I'm just used to like beating a hard boss and then having that reward of like this big long narrative sequence. And then, I'm just conditioned to that type of
Mm.
game loop and reward. So I'm not a big Souls fan for that reason. I like coming home, relaxing. I don't like leaving things unfinished. So that means I don't like fighting a boss 97 times and then going to bed with it not beaten. That doesn't make me excited. With that said, when I watched this trailer and read up on a lot of the background, I agree with Eric. I mean, the world itself, like this just looks so fascinating to explore. I mean, there's so much odd imagery and just this feeling like I could look over every mountain and look behind every stone just to like see what odd creature is going to exist there, or, what odd looking thing is going to be there. I think in terms of art design, the game looks just phenomenal.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, a Soul series, I think it's something you just really need to be in the mood for at the time.
Yeah.
Like whenever I play one, I feel like I need to get my adrenaline up before it. So usually I'm like home from work, I'm just like too tired. But like if it's like during a weekend, like I had some kind of energy drink, my energy is going
Gotta get
through,
the
which not as much lately, but
gotta get
um,
that gamer fuel, huh?
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what gets my determination going to get it. That's how I got through Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. So
Yeah. I might have to play it, go through like a complete Dark Souls experience just to jump into this game, because I'm afraid that with the addition of the open world environment, that it's going to be taking up the difficulty to a notch that I may not be ready for. And I just kind of want to be prepared for that, because I'm kind of curious, like from my limited Dark Souls experience, generally when I died, there was a lot of retreading of similar ground. So like that's the only thing about the open world environment. I'm kind of concerned with how is that going to work, because I understand that you're going to have the 6 locations with the demigods that you have to defeat to get the credit screen. And within those areas, it's going to be very Dark Souls because you're in that dungeon environment that you're used to. But what about when I'm in an open world and I just run into a random enemy in the open world? That's not, how far are you going to push me back if I die? And like part of the appeal is running into the same circumstance and having learned the same circumstance from prior. And so, that creature may not be there
Mm.
again when you reload your save. So I'm definitely very curious how this is all going to work. But from what I've heard and what I've seen, it seems like it's looking pretty good. So
mhm.
I I gotta admit though, the George R. R. Martin thing, like that doesn't weigh on me at all, because it's
Well,
like I feel like it's a gimmick.
I saw an interview clip
Yeah.
where
Yep.
it was he was talking to someone, and it was about something else, I think, but the interviewer brought up the game, and he said, "Yeah, my work on this was done years ago." So they've like had him writing for them for a long time, but it's the game takes a lot longer to develop than it did for him to, come up with a setting and like a backstory for the bosses and the lore like behind the world.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like he's super. He kind of more set the foundation, I guess, like and the underlying ideas of the world, and then they kind of took it from there and have been. They collaborated with him, but it sounds like it was kind of brief. Like it was like a request, like, can you set up a fantasy world for us? And he was like, sure, and then he said,
How
it's
much?
been done, and yeah.
Maybe there was going to be a story from him, but then they're like, "How long does it take you to build a world?" I don't know, but well, maybe like less than a year or so. It's like, "Oh, great!" Then the how long does it take you to finish a story within that world? Finish what?
Yeah.
I saw a comment and I think it was on that interview stand that you brought up, and it was the top comment on that interview, and the comment said something along the lines of, George R. R. Martin must have been so thrilled when he realized this time he can just kill the audience. Because that's, Game of Thrones thing is like no single character is safe. Anyone might die, right?
Yeah.
So now,
the salt mines are going to be fresh this year.
now it's just the players that'll get killed endlessly.
Yeah.
So anyways, very exciting this is coming out. I thought the opening sequence with the chick in the robe getting on the horse, if y'all have ever played the game Koldelka, which is the prequel to Shadow Hearts, that just, I don't know, it just reminded me of the opening of that. And because Shadow Hearts is a very dark game with weird looking stuff like that too, of creatures with like arms sticking out of the back of like demons and stuff. So it's got kind of a similar aesthetic. So whenever I watched that, I'm like, oh man, if they remade this game, it might look something like this. But anyways, I just thought I would throw that out there for those of you that know what I'm talking about. But anyways, I'm excited. So I will definitely be picking it up. Is there anything else you guys want to bring up about Elden Ring before we move on?
No, it just seems like the right direction the series needs to take to not feel stagnated.
Yeah.
So making it open world and adding more elements to the gameplay and such, it just seems like it's a natural step in the right direction for the series.
Yep. And their marketing for it seems to be pretty good. They announced it probably too early, but now this is the first time we've seen it since then. And then if it's coming out in January, my guess is we'll get another trailer for it at that
game show,
the Game Awards show that's always at the end of the year, and then it'll be out the next month, hopefully, if it's not delayed.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Games that these days, whenever they give an exact date, I'm just like, okay, we'll see.
Yeah. But generally, I think more games should do this. Like, announce your game, like soft announce your game, sure, but then don't show anything. Don't get people excited until like 6 months or so, right, before the game comes out.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah,
I guess it's better than saying, I don't know, sometime early 2022, I guess, somewhere around there. I don't know.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah,
you can't be wrong if you do that. I mean, you can be wrong still, but less chance. Anyways, let's move on. All right, so our next game we're going to talk about, probably not as in depth here, but a very big surprise announcement: Metal Slug Tactics. So if you guys are not aware of the Metal Slug franchise, it was and still is a very iconic side-scrolling run and gun arcade game. Now they've turned it into a turn-based RPG with roguelike elements and a tactical setting, kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics. And they're using the same pixel art style from the 2D side-scrolling game, and they're using the same types of animations that you would expect from the later Metal Slug games, the animation kind of anime look. And it's just an RPG now. And I feel like when I first saw this trailer, I'm surprised this has not been done in the past, because I think it looks seamless. Like it just fit like a glove. Of course, I don't know what kind of narrative experience they're going to have here because the stories in Metal Slug games are generally kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But I am going to buy this because I like the graphics. I'm a big fan of the series in terms of I just like playing them. I'm not like super into the lore or anything like, so I'm not going to debate somebody about, you know, anything lore related. I just think this is a fascinating way to reinvent your IP instead of putting out the same Metal Slug game because the games were getting ridiculous. I mean, you're starting to combat aliens and it's starting to like pilot spaceships and crap. Like they are running out of ideas and just getting wacky with it. And so to adopt a new type of game for this, I could see this being its own side thing that continues on, for multiple games. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I think this is just a really cool spin-off game for a popular series. Metal Slug is always notorious for its really well done over the top animations for their games, and that's something that can be presented in a tactical game for sure.
Yeah.
A new type of direction for that. I always say these type of spin-off games are always fine with me as long as their main series that they're coming off doesn't suffer for it. Like you want like someone else to just make like a tactical Final Fantasy game. Like, okay, that's cool as long as they're working on the new Final Fantasy and it's not suffering because of that, then all good with me. Just for example's sake. But yeah, but as long as we see Metal Slugs keep coming uh in the future with me and just not get completely replaced
Mm,
by this game, then all good with me.
yeah.
And I'll
It,
play it too. It looks fun.
yeah, it's coming in 2021 right now. It's only been confirmed for PC, but they don't even have a specific date in 2021 yet. So I'm sure that later in the year we'll find out more and I'm sure it'll come to other places as well. So, Stan, does this game meet your fancy at all or are you just no?
Yeah. It looks good. Um, I guess the only thing that would be holding me back on it is price, right? For this kind of game, I would hope it would be in the like $15 to $30 range, nothing past $30,
Yeah.
And so if the price is right, yeah, definitely would jump in. It looks like a fun game.
Because I am a Metal Slug fan, if they offered a physical version of this game, I might pay a little bit more than that. But only
Mm,
if it was physical. If it was just digital and it was like $40, you're out of your mind.
yeah.
Unless they really go all out on the game and it's like a 60-hour RPG adventure and it's coming out with like 9.5s out of 10s and like they've reinvented the characters into this gripping story. It's probably not going to happen. So
Yeah.
it's probably just going to be a fun game. So I agree with that. Price will be a factor. All right, you guys ready to move on?
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yep.
we got Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. So this is a spinoff of the Gearbox Software's Borderlands series. Tiny Tina is a character who is introduced in Borderlands 2 from some DLC. The developer stressed this is not Borderlands 4. This is going to be its own game, own franchise possibly, but so you don't need to be familiar with Borderlands to play it. The setting takes place inside Tiny Tina's mind and is a fantasy world as opposed to a science fiction setting like Borderlands was. The game promises character creation, spell casting, melee weapons, and various abilities you unlock or learn. In the trailer, you see a man firing a gun at this dragon. So that implies there'll also be gunplay like you had in Borderlands as well, despite this being a fantasy setting. So just keep that in mind. Co-op play will be up to 3 players. That'll be possible. They're keeping the quirky sense of humor, they said, which is a big part of Borderlands. And the trailer showed only pre-rendered footage, so we still don't know what gameplay looks like. But it's coming early. Our favorite window here, early 2022, to all platforms
Yeah.
except Switch. So I'm not a big Borderlands fan, guys. I've played number 2. That's it. But I have to admit that watching this reveal live, it was pretty exciting for a lot of people. I could tell the trailer kind of you kind of see some names on there and such, but you don't really have a good idea what this is. And then at the end, like Tiny Tina walks out. She's in like a robe. You can't see her. Then she turns around and like all of a sudden, like the chat's like, Tiny Tina. And you like realize it's like a Borderlands spinoff. That was really, really cool. So
Mhm.
I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it was a funny trailer, and she's definitely one of the fan favorites. So going in her mind into a fantasy world, the comedic factor is probably going to be very on top. And if you see in the trailer, they're having a lot of comedians voice roles. They have Wanda Sykes, Andy Samberg, Will Arnett. So they're definitely going to be aiming for a very. I mean, Borderlands has always had comedic elements to it for sure. But there it was like comedic tone with a serious backdrop. And this one is probably just going to be full on just over the top craziness, especially since it's a fantasy world inside her head.
Well, did you see the name of the unicorn in the trailer?
What was the name of the unicorn again?
It's called Butt Stallion. Butt.
Perfect.
Yeah. Confirmed.
But yeah, and it said you don't need to know the Borderlands story either. So, if you're someone who just wants to play a wacky fantasy adventure game, um, especially with your friends, since it's co-op with 3 other people, here's a game for you.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. I actually am more interested in this than I think I would be for Borderlands 4, to be honest, because I like fantasy medieval settings. I find it a little off-putting though that they're going to have weapons like guns, because I don't really know how that's going to fit in with the world, because where am I going to buy ammo? Like, is the armor going to sell swords and like ammunition for M16s? But I guess it might. I just, it's just like, okay.
I think this might be a world where you have to throw logic away.
Yeah.
Because who knows, the knights might have guns themselves.
Okay. Screw it. Let's do it. Maybe that's the appeal of it. People just want something different. So I like that. I think I'm excited for it. I want to see some gameplay, but it looks very, very promising. So Stan, you got anything to add there? Or we kind of hit all the notes?
I have not played any of the Borderlands games, so I can't offer any deep insights on this one. So
Fair enough.
but the trailer did look entertaining. That's for sure.
Yeah. Maybe a next round of trailers will grab your attention.
I tell you, if you really want a good story heavily focused game in the Borderlands world, like Tales from the Borderland was actually really good. If you wanted to dive into the lore of that world.
Interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, there's a recommendation. All right, so that's basically the RPGs that were at Jeff Keighley's Boring Fest. I think there may have been one or two other ones. I think there was like an online game or something like that there as well, but these are mainly the big hitters that we saw there. So overall, decent showing for RPGs there. Just wish the show was maybe half as long.
Yeah.
But moving on to an actually good E3 show, Nintendo E3. We had SMT5 make a big splash there. They showed a decent amount there. Then there's actually a lot of gameplay being shown online as well now for SMT5, which is almost too much for my brain to handle. Because if you guys remember, for the longest time, like this game was shown, a trailer was shown at the launch of the Nintendo Switch for SMT5. People thought this game was coming around the corner. And then in like 2018, the director said that this game was not an active development, that he didn't feel comfortable saying it was an active development. And that pissed a lot of people off because they're like, what do you mean? It's not an active development. You have a trailer for it. But, now we've gotten a lot more gameplay footage. We know that it's coming out on November 12th of this year. It's going to have a worldwide release. So it's not coming out anywhere else. Earlier, Nocturne, SMT3 Nocturne, that actually came out in Japan a year prior. So they're not going to do that with this game. It's all coming out at the same time. For those that are unaware of what the SMT series is, the Persona games are a spinoff of the SMT series. But just so you know what you're getting into, after having just recently played Nocturne, SMT games are not really Persona games. They have some similar elements, but there's no social elements. There's very little social elements. There's a lot more emphasis on dungeon exploration and just catching and fusing demons. And the difficulty is way more, at least in Nocturne, was much more difficult than Persona for sure. So I think that some fans of Persona that maybe have not played an SMT game, that this is their first entry, they might be a little surprised by what they're getting, because it's not really, the I'm going to go out with my school buddies and get a job and, join drama club and,
Mhm.
do all these extracurricular tasks in between saving the world. It's literally, you're just in this jacked up world and you're just collecting demons and trying to figure out what's going on. And in the meantime, you're becoming, you're raising your demons and making them stronger and catching new demons. And that's basically what it is. It's a dungeon crawler. So
Yeah, Persona focuses on social elements with its gameplay
yeah,
in the story, and trying to control those social elements. Shin Megami Tensei, the original that Persona is spin-off of, is just goes about a a JRPG story in a traditional format. There aren't like social links you're having with other people. It's you're having for the most part an established story with established characters and choices that they will make that are not heavily affected by you. So more traditional storytelling than pick what you want to say to impress this character or something. That's not in this game. This focuses more, like Hat said, on the dungeon crawling aspects. It focuses more on the gameplay. There is absolutely story there to enjoy. Um, of course, it's a JRPG, but you're not doing like these like social bonding stuff essentially.
yeah. So I actually, from what I played with Noct, I kind of prefer that format. Even though I really liked Persona 5 as a type of game, I prefer the SMT format because constantly I'm like, dude, I just want to go back to the dungeons. I don't want to go to the job. I don't want to like freaking go to basketball practice. I don't want to do all this other crap. I don't want to have to like worry about, all these dialogue options. Just get me back to doing the monster raising and the dungeon crawling. I enjoy that part. So this is more of the stuff that I enjoy. So I actually like that. This game has actually been compared to being more of a mature Pokemon game. However, just so you all know, if you say that around a hardcore SMT fan, they're going to point out that SMT has been around longer than Pokemon. So
Mhm.
Pokemon is like a SMT, not SMT is like Pokemon. But I think it's a good reference because it does feel like a more mature Pokemon game.
I would argue capturing animals and make them fight each other has been around since even before video games. So, you know,
It's a good Roman Empire game, Roman Empire esque.
Yeah.
you're kind of just asking yourself who first made a game that is based off something we already do in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this game is not without controversies though. So SMT 5 appears to star a high schooler in a high school setting, and some fans feel this is making SMT into Persona instead of being an SMT game because they feel like Atlas has seen the popularity of Persona and they're trying to make SMT more like Persona instead of being like SMT.
To be fair, Nocturne, your
Yeah,
main character is a high schooler,
I think.
and not Persona. I mean, a Nocturne. You're a high school schooler sent to post-apocalyptic Japan.
Mhm.
In Shin Megami Tensei 4, you're students of an academy who just graduated and exploring the underworld of Tokyo. I mean, it's not far fetched to put the main character in a younger high school setting.
Yeah, so that's what I thought too. Because I just got done. I mean, I haven't beaten Nocturne, so I just want to be clear on that. But I've gotten pretty far into it, and it does start off with you being in high school. So this isn't something that's new, but I do think that people are at least reading into the trailers that there is more of a high school setting than that game, where that was kind of like the beginning of it. Whereas this game, there's a lot more of the high school stuff in it. I just think that that's the setting for the game. I don't think it. I think people are pointing to SMT4 and pointing out that those weren't high schoolers, So I don't know. I think we see this from time to time when these games come out. People just find a reason to be mad.
I think there's bigger things to be mad about in this game, like how stupid that haircut is.
Yeah, people are pointing out that so in the game you have to you can transform into a demon, and so the demon form of your main character, he has this big blue like hairdo, and people are complaining that the game looks very androgynous, like like it's supposed to be some kind of gender statement about the like gender politics, because they're making the character not look male or female. And
Mm.
I really don't think that's what they're doing, guys, because I saw a half naked mermaid as one of the demons, and I just like that doesn't seem like that goes together with I think I think the character does look dumb with what they did, but I don't think it was some like political statement about gender.
If it was, I would have just preferred they just like let you pick a boy or be a girl at the beginning. Like I thought that would have been a cool idea. Let you just pick the
True.
gender you want to play, because they're silent protagonists
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
overall. So
Mm.
just to help you immerse yourself, a different gender. That's completely cool to me. But to make something that's just that's confusing and not being straightforward much with what they're aiming to do with that, or maybe it's just coincidentally a really stupid haircut, and
I will
it's one or the other.
I will acknowledge that when I saw some gameplay for this game initially, and I saw the character with the blue, like transformed into a demon with the blue hair and everything, I thought that was a female. And I thought, oh, they're letting you choose male or female in this game. And I thought, wow, maybe I'll choose the female. And then I found out like, oh no, that's the same male character transformed to look like that. So I see why people are thinking that, but I just think that like it's just a design choice. I don't think it was, because there's literally nothing else in the game that has that same commentary, if that's what people think is going on.
Mhm.
You think it would pop up elsewhere and it doesn't. So
Speaking of which, I'm glad they went back to open 3D terrain
yeah.
in this game, like Nocturne, and not. I understand why they did it for the fourth game on the 3DS, but the fourth game on 3DS became like a pseudo first person slash let your character move around in some segments, but they went back to more like Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2, where it's just like a portrait of a character and like portrait of the enemies, kind of a low budget looking type of deal with it. So I'm glad they went back to, in this game, having like fully animated demons, battles and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't low budget on that.
Yeah. I totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah. I'm surprisingly excited for this game. Initially when we learned more about this game last year, we were in the middle of the pandemic, and I just lost all interest in the game because the developer had said that this game was going to make me reflect on unemployment, death, and the possibility of nuclear warfare. And I was just like, dude, like, I'm not trying to think about that like during the middle
I
of a
think
pandemic. But
I think 3 already did that for me.
yeah. Well, now that I've played 3, I kind of get the gameplay loop. I get the setting a little bit more, and I was like, okay, I can mess with this. I like this. But at first, I was just like, you're making this sound awful, But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Stan, are you? Does this appeal to the Stan JRPG
Um,
part of your brain?
I don't know if I would get it for full price just because I'm not the biggest fan of the Pokemon style, or I should say SMT style
The Roman
monster
Empire, yeah.
monster monster taming. games in general. That's just not a gameplay loop that is that I stick with for very long.
I think you would like the challenge, to be honest. The challenge is, it's not like Pokemon at all, though. Pokemon, you just run all over the place. Doesn't matter. You're going to win.
Yeah, yeah,
I would
that's
say
true.
these games are notorious for their difficulty,
Mhm.
unless you put them on easier modes. Normal mode setting, they are um, there is grind elements, especially when you want to fuse certain demons together to make a specific one you need, or a specific team you need set up to have a remote chance of taking this certain boss down, who can still one shot things in your party no matter how prepared you are.
Mhm.
So there is a lot of micromanaging and dealing with the demons you capture to come with you. So if you're not a fan of like some of the back burner stuff like that, the game might not be for you. Um, it's I don't think the games have been smoothly paced in that regard.
Yeah.
It's not like pick your kind of team you want and you can work with it, unless it's in easier modes.
I,
Normal and harder, they kind of entice you a lot of times to find certain demons to turn the battles in your favor.
Yeah. I do like that it appears there are no random encounters on the map. The enemies are visible on the map and you can engage or move past them. That's always good because then you can like freely move or explore or combat, kind of at your own pace. So,
Yeah, it seems like a staple now. I think a lot of JRPGs, especially bigger ones, are just moving away from random encounters now. I think
it's
that's just becoming a norm.
yeah, they get tedious.
well,
Well,
it's kind of funny, because Chrono Trigger did that
was ahead of its
20
time, yeah.
25 years ago. But, yeah, I think the game
Yep.
looks great. I'm really excited for it. I think the new color palette, it looks much more vibrant, whereas at least in Nocturne it was more gray and kind of gloomy.
Mm,
And I think people are a little upset about the more vibrant colors in this, than that it like is again trying to be more persona like. I just think it looks better. And from the story that we've seen here, it's clearly still an SMT game. It's not, I didn't see any ditzy blonde haired characters trying to get me to join drama club and the trailer. So I don't think it's going the persona route. I think there's still going to be distinct properties, but I mean, it looks good. I think it looks like a polished Switch game. So I'm excited to pick it up. It's coming out on pre-orders begin June 12th. So they've already began, but it's coming out November 12th. So that'll be the window for that game. All right, so let's move on to Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin. Now, there's a demo that's out on the 25th, so it's the 27th right now that we're recording this. And we'll talk a little bit about the demo here shortly, but let's just go over some of the big points that the developers have talked about that they want people to know about the game. So basically, game's coming out on July 9th. If you want to play the demo, the save data carries over. And this game, Monster Hunter Stories, is in the same setting as the other Monster Hunter games. However, it's a more traditional JRPG. It's got turn-based battles. It's not that action combat that you may have been used to with the other Monster Hunter games. And there's a large focus on monster training, keeping, and the original game had a very cutesy aesthetic. They've brought that forward with this game, but they've toned it down a little bit. But compared to the Monster Hunter World and games like that, it's still pretty cutesy looking. Per an interview with IGN, the game's director said there were three main focuses for this game, which focused on criticism from the original. Number one, they said they got the feedback that characters in the original were too cute and chibi looking. And they said they were surprised because their primary demographic for that game were adults, which they thought would be kids given the art style, but mostly adults played it and they didn't like the art style. So they've made the game a little bit older, a little bit more mature than the first one. And then they said also they heard there was atypical enemy attack patterns that were frustrating in the original. So in the original, if you were reading a monster's movements correctly, the monster would still sometimes do something like randomly. that cause you to get damage, and people didn't like that because they read the monster correctly. So they've focused on making the gameplay tighter in that regard. In in the previous game, intricate monster customization took a very long time to get to, whereas now you can do that much earlier in the game. So those are the three big areas that they've tried to improve on with this game. And so yeah, it's coming out on July 9th. Like I said, there's a demo right now you can play, and their save data will carry over. I've downloaded the demo and I played it for 20 minutes last night. Stan, I know you played a lot longer last night, but I'll just say that I liked the opening cutscene. I thought it was very polished. It seemed like a higher resolution than Xenoblade, which I really liked. But once we got to the actual game, my God, in like 10 minutes, I got like what seemed like epically long tutorials for basic crap like opening the menu. And maybe maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit because it was like 1:30 in the morning. So I plan on playing the demo a little bit more when I'm like well rested and not like aching to go to bed. But it just seemed like I just did not have a lot of patience last night to sit through all the tutorials, and there was a lot of them. So I just kind of put it down for now, and I'll come back to it later. But Stan, I know you said you played about an hour or so, right?
Yeah, I played about an hour, and you are right. Most of that time was just going through tutorials, and I also got fatigued for that reason and kind of set it down for now. Um, to start off the game, you fight 3 battles, and all 3 battles are, like, heavily tutorialized of they wanna kinda explain every facet of the combat system to you rather than kind of letting you, like, start off against just very basic enemies on your own and, like, introduce concepts more gradually. Um,
The
I
first game was pretty guilty of this too.
Yeah.
Like the entire first chapter is just like one big tutorial.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have kept playing, but I got frustrated because there's this character kinda guiding you out on your first, assignment as a writer. You're like a younger
Is it
kid character, and this is
Professor
their
Oak?
No, no. But
Mm.
there's, like, you come across a monster and you fight it, and it's a tutorial battle. Then you come across another monster and you fight it, and it's a tutorial battle. And then you fight a boss, and it's like, well, here's how you fight a boss, basically. And then when that was over, they're like, okay, let's go back to the town. And then when I went back to the town, and I got more tutorials, and I was like, okay, like because there was kind of a decent. I wouldn't say it's like super long, but there was like a decently long cutscene to start the game that you have to sit through, and then you don't really feel like you're playing the game when it's so heavily tutorialized and you can only like select one option
Yeah.
as they are trying to teach you what to do.
Yeah.
So I suspect that's because they still are targeting this game at a younger demographic, and so they want to. It's just very handholdy in the way that they open the game, and you know it may not be like that for the whole game. Hopefully not. But it did put me off a little bit that it took so long to get to the point where I could just explore this island that they've set up, and like start leveling up my team, my monsters, and so on.
Well, what's funny is, this might be their criticism or their response to the criticism that it took too long to get to some of the game's more advanced features. So maybe they're front loading all these tutorials as
Mm,
opposed to spreading them out. But I agree with you. I think that some of the stuff just maybe does not need to be explained that much. I mean, I'm serious. Like they explained to me how to find the item screen in the menu, and there's like 6 options in the menu, and it says
yeah,
item. Like I, I can just tell me like press A, and I'll go there and that's it. But I gotta be honest, guys, if you watch the trailer that they just put out, I watched that thing and I was like, man, this looks great. And I thought, "No, this is gonna be a massive hit. Like this is a sleeper. Game's gonna come out and this is gonna sell a ton and people are gonna really like it. I mean, this looks phenomenal." And I read these developer interviews, and I saw they took some of this criticism to heart. Like this looks fantastic. And then this is one of those instances where I go and I play the demo, and you kind of like pop the hole in that enthusiasm because I just like I just sat through a bunch of tutorials, and I think that
Mhm.
for a demo, like maybe they could have put us in a like a different spot in the game that was more exciting than having to wade through all that.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the game though, because you can download the demo and then your data carries over
Yeah.
to the main game, which I think is a good feature. But it's just the game itself is the beginning of the game holds your hand way too much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it
but I do like the aesthetic of the game a lot. The When you get into the general gameplay, it does not look as good or smooth as the cutscenes do,
yeah.
but it's close at times. Like it's well presented game, I think.
I think if you can't make a very natural tutorial for your game that helps teach you without, you know, slapping you in the face with it, then I think like at the beginning it needs to be like, "Hey, would you like some tutorials? If not, hit no."
Yeah.
And if you don't want to hit no, and it can be like, "Okay, if you need the tutorials, you need to go back to the menu and turn them back on."
Mhm. I
And
I
I don't
remember
know why
like
people don't do that.
when I was younger and I played Pokemon Red on my Game Boy, it wasn't really heavily tutorialized, if that's a word. It was like pick your starter Pokemon, right? Now go into the tall grass. That's how you catch a Pokemon. And then that was it, you know? Like, so I don't know why they feel the need for a game that is trying to appeal to a younger demographic to so like handhold the player's hand so much. Like I think kids will figure it out,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's more engaging is to play a game and slowly realize yourself like all of its features. So
So let's be we've kind of talked about the demo a little bit, and unfortunately it was a giant tutorial.
mhm,
But like you said, Stan, we're assuming the entire game is not going to be a complete tutorial, and eventually it's going to hit its flow. And I haven't played the original, but from what I understand, the monster raising part of it is pretty fun once you get to it. So I'm hoping that once we get there with this game, that we're going to have a similar game loop that is satisfying to play. And from what I have played, and which is very little by the way, and from what I've seen from trailer and gameplay, it does look like a potentially good game. I didn't
mhm,
get the impression that it was a bad game at all. Felt very polished for a Switch game. And so I would definitely recommend people checking at least the demo out before they go pick up the game, and seeing if it's something they want to do, if they can sit through that little tutorial section of the game and get to the actual game. Because there are certain games where I can just play the tutorial or the demo, and I think this is a terrible game. Lost Sphere, that was one of those where I played the demo and just that was no, that was not going to be a good game. Sometimes you can tell the demo is really informing, but I think in this case, it's worth a second look because from what I've seen elsewhere, once it hits its stride, it's actually still a good game.
Yeah, I will say at least that I can't speak on behalf of the second game, but in the first game, it was heavily tutorialized in the first chapter. But once it was all said and done, when they actually like kicked you out of the village and made you go out to explore the world and the city, they did kind of let you go from there in terms of the tutorial. I don't remember there being any heavy tutorial dialogue after that. I don't know if they're just like heavy loading everything at the beginning and then letting you go. Because
hopefully, yeah.
yeah, because in the first game there is a lot to learn, especially if you're a child. Like turning in quests, learning how the combat works, learning how to capture monsters, take care of monsters, raise them, grow them, evolve them, fusing all sorts of different stuff. Which I think there could have been a better way, of course, but I guess they just decided to front load everything, and then after that's like, well, good luck.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
As you can see, this is I think they learned that um more adults actually play games like these than children nowadays.
Hmm.
So I'm it's good that it kind of went in this direction. It's a nice natural step. And the game does look a lot better than the newer Pokemon games. So I guess
Yeah,
whatever new Pokemon game comes out, they kind of need to look at their competition and try to one up them.
they they might, or they might just think to themselves, well, it's Pokemon and everybody bought the last one, no matter how hard they complained, right? So
Screw you. We'll make it look worse than the Game Boy. You'll still buy it.
That's very true. That's very true.
yeah.
It'll still sell a billion copies. So, like I said, this game is coming out. Monster Hunter Stories 2, it's coming out on July 9th. And there is a demo right now that you can download, and it's on the Switch. Download it for free. Your save data will carry over if you decide to pick up the main game. So, if you're looking for something to play right now, you're low on cash, definitely check this demo out because it seems fairly long. So,
Hmm.
check it out. I think it looks great. Next game is going to go for a negative sour note for me, but we have Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. This was shown at Nintendo's E3, and this is going to be a port to the Switch. So it's launching on September 24th. This game was originally released on console and PC, and now it's coming to Switch, like I said. And if you're not familiar with this game, it attempts to retell the entire Dragon Ball Z story via an open world RPG. And this version of the game that's coming to Switch is going to contain all of the currently released DLC with the game that's out right now. But as right now, it will not contain the upcoming Trunks, the Warrior of Hope DLC, but that will be available for purchase for Switch. So it's got all the current DLC, but not the upcoming DLC. So they'll still have one piece of DLC you may have to buy if that's what you want to do. I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm not that excited for this release. And that's mostly because I played the game on the PS4. I put about 25 hours on the PS4 version. I don't know why I bought the game, but I just was like, I'm just going to pick this up because for some reason, I like the idea of this, replaying the story in an RPG fashion. And I enjoyed it somewhat. Like it brought back a lot of nostalgia, a lot of childhood memories. But the game itself was just kind of like, okay.
Average. Yeah.
Yeah, like the open world was just, it was basically you just fly around and collect these like little glowing orbs like that are in the sky. And then there was like little like fetch quests you could do and like random encounters. And that was basically you just grinding for the next boss. And that was basically the gameplay loop. The actual boss battles, those were actually pretty fun, but they were very like timing oriented was very important. So I imagine a Switch release would not be good for this because like you're gonna want 60 FPS. And I just don't see that being actor with the Switch. And especially if you watch the Switch trailer, the graphics, they look severely like downgraded from the PS4 version. The PS4 version looks very crisp and clean. I don't even think that's 720p to be honest. When I'm looking at the trailer for the DBZ Kakarot coming to Switch, I don't think this is a very optimized Switch. So I just don't think that's going to be a rock solid 30 FPS. I think it's going to be all over the place.
I think the only reason you get it for this version is one, if you really want the portability of it, that you're willing to sacrifice optimization of the game.
Yeah.
And if you have nothing else to play it on, if the Switch is your only console,
Yeah.
then I suppose it's okay for what it is. But if you have alternatives and you're not after the portability necessarily, get it somewhere else. Get it
Yeah.
on PS4, get it on Steam.
You can buy this game on Amazon for $25. Play it, and then you can just buy the DLC. Instead of spending $60 on the Switch version, and it's going to run at 540p, it's probably not even going to be a rock solid 30 FPS. It's probably going to be all over the place. This doesn't look like it's a well optimized game. It looks like it was cheaply optimized for the Switch, and I just think it's a cash grab. So save your money, buy it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So All right, let's move on. Astria Ascending. This was the last RPG, big RPG that for Nintendo. I think we got another game after here we can talk about. But Astria Ascending, this is a game that's coming to all platforms on September 30th. And it's a JRPG that includes the following developers. Nojima, who we all know is a writer for Final Fantasy. He wrote the story for this game. We know Sakamoto, who did the music for Final Fantasy Tactics, Vagrant Story, and Final Fantasy 12. He's coming back and writing music for this game. And it's also got Arson Game Studios, who did the Super Neptunia RPG that developed the game. So some big names there developing this game. It's going to have turn-based combat. You're choosing 8 characters with 20 possible classes. It's got hand-drawn visuals, English and Japanese voices available in the game. And the quote for the premise of the game or the RPG is, get your puke bags ready because it's terrible. It says, as one of the fated 8, explore the world of Okanon, where 12 ancient beasts dwell, and fight against your destiny to save the world in this hand-drawn turn-based JRPG. So
yeah, Destiny, Fate, our favorite plot points.
Yep, I'm fighting that every day, my faith. So, guys, I really didn't like what I saw. I got to be honest.
I'm indifferent. For one, I think the more sexual characters are just way too over the top to be taken seriously on the design standpoint.
Okay.
Like, I think, like, I like the artists and designers and the people who are behind this. I just don't know if this is the kind of game I want from them.
Yeah.
Like, it just seems like something I find on mobile. It's
Yeah.
just more battle oriented than like immersing yourself in the world. I could be wrong though. It could just be their way of presenting the world, but like, I don't know. It's
So I like that Sakamoto's handling the music. I think that's cool. I haven't heard a new game from him in a long time. And it's cool that Nojima wrote the story, but I really don't feel like he's that good at coming up with concepts. I mean, when the best games that he's worked on, Sakaguchi or somebody else came up with the concept, and then he kind of wrote some of the sequences, but he wasn't the main developer of the story. And this trailer literally has this quote in here that is just awful, right? It says, fighting against your destiny to save the world, right? Like, what are you talking about? That's like one of the things the character says, we're fighting against our destiny to save the world. That's the most uninspired and generic concept of an RPG ever. Later they say, we didn't choose our fate chose us. What does that? No, shut up. That's not its story. So
Yeah.
I'm watching this trailer. I wanted to run to the bathroom and throw up because it was just so corny, and I just don't think this is like, I don't feel like Nojima really put a lot of work into this. So, and then from a gameplay perspective, I'm also not a fan of like these RPGs that have such a large cast of characters with no true protagonist. Are they spending time developing each character in a meaningful way and writing meaningful dialogue between all the different variations of party members you can have? Or are they actually just going to have like super generic dialogue that could fit with almost anyone? Like it's just going to be generic lines where, oh, you can copy and paste this with any range of characters. I just don't think it's going to be a very good game. And Eric nailed it on the head with the mobile reference. Despite the fact that the artwork is hand drawn, I do get the vibe that this is going to come out on iOS at some point.
Yeah, it appears that way.
So
I do like the kind of the artwork style, I guess, because I like some of the art from the Vanillaware games, who made like Dragon's Crown and what's it called? I've been playing recently, Odin Sphere, which those games also have very hypersexualized characters, like some of the character models. But like I do like the hand drawn 2D character elements. I just don't know is if they are as well executed here in this, based on this trailer, as they are in the Vanillaware games. So yeah,
It's-
but I do like that Sakamoto's doing another soundtrack. So if nothing else, it'll be a great soundtrack to listen to.
Yeah, it just seems uninspired. I don't get the vibe that anybody wanted to work on this game.
Mm.
The feeling like Nojima was hired for, he did this for a paycheck, and that's basically what it is. It's just like hey, if we put all these names in the game, it's gonna sell.
Mm. Yeah.
Nobody wanted to make this game. So I'm not gonna pick it up, but it's there if people want it. It's coming on, do we have a release date? Did I say release date here? September 30th. It's coming to all platforms. September 30th, if you want to check it out, if it appeals to you. There are a lot of different characters. You can do a lot of different varieties in combat. So if that's something you enjoy,
Yeah, it could be good, but not a great first impression.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same boat as you guys. I'm probably gonna be cautious with this one. If it turns out being good, I may do like a wait for a sale type of deal. But though there are names in there that I do find credible and good, just the product I'm looking at doesn't seem like something that would hold my attention very long.
Yeah.
So I just need to see where it stands when it comes out.
Totally agree. Well said. All right, next up, but not least, I think are we in the Xbox area? Or Stan, I think you wanted to bring up Advance Wars, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Nintendo announced remakes for the Switch of the first two Advance Wars games, which are tactical turn-based games originally for the Game Boy Advance, hence the name Advance Wars. So yeah, that it's coming out on December 3rd of this year, so the end of the year. We don't know price point, although I assume it's bundling both games. Nintendo will probably charge $60.
Yeah.
But it's from Intelligent Systems, who is the developer of Fire Emblem, so they know like the tactical gameplay. That's what they're known for, and they also do Paper Mario. And so yeah, this is the first Advance Wars game since 2008. There was one on the DS. That was the last one to come out. So the franchise has been
pretty
dormant.
stagnant.
Yeah, dormant essentially. And yeah, the original Advance Wars was a highly well-reviewed game. And I remember as a kid, like in middle school and maybe even elementary school, it was a very popular game around the lunch table.
I believe the first title was it a launch title?
It may have been. Yeah, it's the fifth best reviewed game for the Game Boy Advance, at least on Metacritic, which
It was. It
accurate.
came out in 2001.
Yeah,
same year as the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, it was very popular, and it had multiplayer, which you could use the link cable for the Game Boy Advance, and so people were playing across the lunch table, hooking up their Game Boys with the link cable, being careful not to unplug them right as they also tried to have lunch real quick. Yeah, I just remember it being very popular. I didn't get into it very much myself, but it was like this game and Mega Man Battle Network and Pokemon. Those were like the Game Boy Advance games that everybody was playing. So it seems like it's getting a good reception too. Like the redone artwork and game. The entire game is basically remade. It's not a port of the Game Boy Advance games, but the reception for it so far is like really, really good. So people are happy.
I'm surprised we haven't actually gotten another game since then, given it was very popular. So this is a nice surprise.
Mm-hmm. And on Nintendo's website, it says it includes the multiplayer up to 4 players as well. So you won't have to bother with those link cables anymore.
Man, that's part of the fun. Very cool. Very
Yep.
cool. So I'll definitely check that. I remember when I got a Game Boy Advance, I thought, okay, like I always had my eyes on Advance Wars because I saw it reviewed very well. And I like every time I was at, GameStop or EB Games, or whatever the hell it was called back then, I remember looking at it and I picked the game up several times that I was going to pick it up. And I always ended up going with something else.
Hmm.
And I never got around to playing it. So maybe this will be the time.
I always looked at Advance Wars, especially since it was made by the people who made Fire Emblem,
Yeah.
that it was a more stress-free type of game. More no, not saying less difficult. I'm
Okay.
saying like stress-free as in like no permadeath and
Yeah.
something that appeals more to younger audience since it was on a handheld device.
Mm, okay.
Then later on they took their chances with like Fire Emblem. If I had to guess why Advance Wars hasn't seen much recently is I think maybe Fire Emblem just kind of took over after the DS one came out, and they've just been focusing more on making Fire Emblem games than anything else really.
Well, what were they going to call the sequel? DS Wars?
It
Yeah.
was Dual Strike is what the DS one was called.
Oh,
Advance Wars
okay.
Dual Strike.
Advance
Okay.
Wars Dual Strike.
So
Yeah.
there was that.
Yeah.
Okay. This is
So
how out
they
of the Advanced Wars loop I am.
so if they keep up with tradition, what I do hope comes from this
Okay.
is that this remake is successful, that they tell them go ahead and make a new one.
Yeah.
Then we can get some little uh silly title to go with the Switch, like Advance Wars, Switcher Up. I don't know, something.
Fatal
Uh,
Switch.
Fatal
Fatal
Switch. There you
Switch.
go. There you go. Why hasn't Nintendo hired you?
I'm available. Yeah.
But yeah, I hope this succeeds. I only played the first one. I didn't play the second or Dual Strike, but I liked the first one. I played it. It was one of like the few GBA games that were out at the time. So
Cool.
that was one I did get, but I never tried the second or third one. Maybe
Yeah.
I will with this new one coming out.
Cool deal. Very cool. So I guess since we kind of hit this road here, before we move on to Xbox, real quick, let's not spend 30 minutes on this, but Eric, did you like Breath of the Wild 2?
Yeah. I mean, we didn't get much new information beyond that we're going to be in the sky. Also, along with they didn't go into detail how the land's going to be different. It just showed us that we have more areas in the sky now. Link has a new interesting look when he's in the sky. I don't know if that's going to be a story concept or they're just going just distinguishing between him in the sky and him in the land.
Mm,
There's going
yeah.
to be new abilities from Yoshika Slate, um, and new things you can do with old concepts that you had from Breath of the Wild. So that's mostly what we got. I'm sure big time Zelda enthusiasts will be digging deep into the little information we got, but right now we still don't completely know what new we're getting. But they did mention in an interview, Bill Trennan, he said that the further the development goes and more stuff they show over time before release, that you will know this is definitely a different game
Very
from
cool.
Breath of the Wild.
Very cool.
So
Yeah,
that's all I gotta say about that.
very cool. I'm looking forward to it. I know that's coming out in 2022, which we can finally rule out this Christmas or holiday time
Mhm.
frame for the game. And hopefully we get a Switch Pro around that time frame. That's what the current feeling is, that we're going to get that Switch Pro with the Breath of the Wild 2 release, which makes sense. Hopefully, stocking issues will be resolved by then. And if that's the case, I'm going to buy a Switch Pro and I'm going to keep my main Switch. I'm already super excited about it. I'm going to turn that into an emulation. I'm going to hack it, put
Mm.
emulators on there, and I'll have a portable emulator that I can put on my TV and take it off for portable mode. And, it's got all the buttons set up for Dolphin so I can play GameCube games, and like all the buttons will be properly labeled and everything like that, and motion control will work. So I'm really excited for this this window of games coming out around that time frame. So
Yeah, rather if the Switch Pro comes out before Breath of the Wild 2 or right when it comes out, I guarantee there's going to be a bundle with it with Breath of the Wild 2 or some
Mm.
like exclusive Switch Pro like decal, like some Hyrulean decal
yeah,
with the game. I'm
yeah,
sure of it.
yep. So hopefully we see that. All right, let's move on to the Microsoft and Bethesda presentation. Man, it's weird how normal that sounds now. Whenever I see Microsoft and Bethesda, I'm like, oh yeah, seems normal. But back in September when Microsoft announced they purchased Bethesda for $7 billion, I remember like half the day I was just like, pinch me because this can't be real,
Mm.
but for now until for forever, Microsoft owns Bethesda. So, but anyways, so the first game we're going to talk about here, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. They showed a trailer there, and it's coming to all platforms except Switch as of right now. They haven't announced a Switch version, but it's been delayed from 2022 to 2023. The development team includes the writer, if you guys are not familiar, the development team includes the writer of Suikoden 1 and 2, among other Suikoden development team members. This Kickstarter was started to make this game. It raised $4.5 million, and it's the third most successful video game Kickstarter. They also announced Eiyuden Chronicle Rising at the end of the trailer. They showed like a short little segment for that, and it's a spin-off game, and it's coming in 2022, so a year earlier. And it's an action RPG with town building mechanics set in the world of Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. Initially, I did not realize this was the case. This is actually a Kickstarter goal, which was the last tier when it reached $4.5 million. They said they would make a separate town building action RPG game set in the Eiyuden Chronicle world. So this is them meeting that goal on the Kickstarter website that, okay, like we've said we would do this, so now we're doing it. I gotta be honest, guys, from the trailer that we saw there, I'm not that impressed with what we saw. It's just like I like the way the game looked, but we basically saw the same exact trailer that they showed a
Mm.
year ago. Like they didn't give any new footage. It was the same scenes. And, you know, all they did was announce that they delayed the game at E3. Well, that's not that exciting. So, and we still don't know really what the game is about. We have an idea. There's some snippets on their Kickstarter page and stuff, but there's a lot of assumptions and discussion about, oh, this is going to be the next Suikoden game. And I think that's fine, but we still don't have a strong grasp of what the game actually is. And, after a year, you showed us the same exact trailer we've already seen with some generic character artwork at the beginning to pad the trailer out to make it seem longer. And then you just delayed the game for an entire year. I felt like this was a pretty crappy reveal. So they even used the same music from the initial trailer. I went back and checked. It was the same exact song. So we didn't even get like a new song or anything. So it was a very weird reveal. And it kind of reminded me of that Final Fantasy 15 2-year anniversary stream where they're like, oh, we're going to have an anniversary stream. And then they started the stream and all they announced was basically that they were canceling all the DLC. It wasn't that bad, but it was kind of like, oh, Eiyuden Chronicles appearing at E3. It was leaked. People were excited. And then they showed the reveal and it was like the same trailer we've already seen. And so, and with the Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, I mean, are you delaying the main game to work on this? I don't think anybody wanted that. I think this spinoff game should have come out after Eiyuden Chronicle.
I have a feeling it's they're going. I have a feeling another developer is making that game because what Bloodstain did during their campaign is they went to Inti Crates and they said, "Hey, can you make a spinoff game that could hold people till the actual Bloodstain game comes out?" And then they made Curse of the Moon, and Curse of the Moon was excellent. Hopefully, that's the kind of direction they're going with, where it's just like a spin-off game, maybe set off in the world. For the way it's described, it sounds like a 2D action
They actually,
dark cloud-like game.
in the trailer, towards the end of the trailer, they show like 6 seconds of footage from the game, the Rising game. And It had a similar art style to Eiyuden Chronicle, except it looked more 2D. I don't want to say it was like Mario 2D, but it didn't look like it was as deep in the areas. Maybe it was more linear, but yeah, it seems like they're either reusing a lot of assets or I don't know, but there's town building mechanics. So
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, and I still like the way the game looks. Like everything looks really well polished and it doesn't look, cheapened out. It looks like they're trying to evolve the sprites and their 2D sprite JRPG genre in their own way, while giving like the Suikoden element to it. So I still like what it is. It's just that we didn't really get anything new with it. Just a reminder that, like, hey, this game's going to be a
well,
thing
we did
sometime in the
get
future.
something new. It's being delayed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, like you guys are mentioning, it wasn't really a substantial update. It almost feels like they just wanted to take advantage of the E3 hype because I mean, maybe there's people out there who are not aware of this game because, we're kind of in like the more hardcore JRPG circles of online discussion and so like we were aware of this when the Kickstarter happened almost a year ago at this point. And since that time they picked up a publisher for the game, 505 Games,
Right.
and that those original trailers for the Kickstarter project also doesn't have the publisher right on the trailers or anything. So this allowed them to do that, I guess, and kind of like officially announce the game, like as I don't know, more of like an official announcement with a publisher like attached to it at a conference or a digital virtual conference, rather than just
I feel
a
like they could have.
YouTube video they announced it from,
They showed us game footage that was pre $4.5 million.
they did. Yeah.
Like, show us some new area or something. Like, don't just show us the same exact trailer. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't a substantial update. It felt more like they were just trying to like remind those who already know of the game of its existence and then also maybe use this the platform like to get more people who didn't know about it
Yeah.
like excited for it. So
By the way, guys, I'm okay that they delayed the game. I'm not like upset that they delayed the game. If you need more time, take as much time as you want. I'd rather the game be good than
mhm,
bad. So delaying it's fine. It was just a we. I feel like if you're going to be at E3 and you're going to present this game and it's been people gave you money and they've been doing like little developer diaries or whatever, but they haven't really shown anything that much that substantial in a long time. Like you should, and people expect there to be something at E3.
You don't need to spend money to get a panel in Microsoft's E3 to tell people that your game is going to be delayed. You can do that for free on the internet, and the people who are following you will get the message.
true. Yeah.
But I suppose they wanted to announce the action spinoff in there also. But again,
They didn't show anything barely, like really anything.
yeah, you showed like 2 seconds of footage. Like I would have I would have waited till I had enough footage to show off the game and what it can do. But I'm not in the business. What do I know?
Yeah. It's not the end of the world though. I mean, a lot of people are really still excited. I'm still going to buy it when it comes out. Still going to play it. I just thought it was a little weird the way they had that set up. I think it could have been done a little bit better, but is what it is. Next next game we have is Starfield. Oh boy. So the trailer states this is well here. Let me get to the actual. So this is Bethesda's first, the trailer states this is Bethesda's first original RPG in 25 years. It's set in space and it's coming out
Ooh.
November 11th, 2022. They call it a release window, so that date is possible to change. but it's coming to it. It isn't coming to PS5. That's what a lot of people thought, that since this game was in development, pre-merger, pre-acquisition, Microsoft buying Bethesda, that possibly Starfield would come out on PS5. Nope, it's going to be an Xbox Series X and PC exclusive, and it launches on Xbox Game Pass day one. So all we know is that it is going to be a sandbox RPG similar to other Bethesda RPGs, except it's going to be in space. And, you know, guys, like, I think this seems like a cool idea, but I hate to be negative. We're hitting negative tones here, but I mean, the trailer states 25 years in the making. That's a little
Yeah.
misleading. Like, if I go back to the 90s and Bethesda, are they really like talking about this game in a serious way? I highly doubt it. Clearly they mean this is a new IP, but to say that it's been 25 years in the making is ridiculous, right? And it, like, where's Elder Scrolls 6? Why are we, like, why are we still waiting to see Elder Scrolls 6? And I think it's because they're working on this new IP, and it just feels a little ridiculous, because Skyrim came out in 2011. That, like, that was a massively successful game. And why are you not making that game again? You know, like, why are you not making Elder Scrolls 6 and making that your main focus? And I was like, okay, you're working on a new IP. That's why I'm not getting more Elder Scrolls 6. You're working on this new IP. Okay, I get it. Finally, we get to see Starfield. They show us a freaking CG trailer with no actual gameplay. And I'm like, what is this? What the hell is going on over there?
Yeah.
You know? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier, like, when we were talking about Elden Ring, how they did a good job with the marketing, because like they announced the game, then the game disappeared off the map, and then the next time you heard about it is a trailer that announced the game is coming out in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, to be
This
fair,
game,
this game's coming out November 2022, apparently.
that's a long ways away.
Yeah, but
That's
from what they showed, it doesn't seem like that's a realistic window. I mean, they didn't even show the game. They
yeah,
showed a
yeah.
CG sequence. That
I
it literally
I
said on the trailer pre-alpha game, pre-alpha footage, not
yeah.
representative of actual game.
Yeah, I think
No, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say I wonder if this is a consequence of them now being owned by Microsoft, because Bethesda used to be much better about, we're announcing a game, it's available 6 months from now. Stay tuned for like a couple more
That's true.
trailers and like some interviews you could read, like in the old gaming magazines, you know, about the game, like leading up to development. They did that with Fallout 4, I know, and they even did that with Fallout 76, although that turned out not to be great. But at least their marketing leading up to the release of the game was more consistent and within a reasonable time frame. This is the second time they've like announced the game Starfield, and they didn't have any gameplay or anything to show. It's just a release date announcement, and now that release date is, what is that? What, November of 2022? That's like 18 months away.
Yeah, there's no way it's going to hit that. They're going to move the date.
Yeah, like it's just not. It doesn't feel good to be teased over and over again. You know, just like announce the game so that I know it. It's like in the back of my mind. But the next time you show it, you got to have something substantial to show so that I have some kind of idea in my mind of what this game is actually going to be.
And maybe, like, this is like, maybe you're right. Maybe Microsoft forced their hand on this because Microsoft wanted to come out and say, you know what? No, this generation, we've got games. We were
Yes.
criticized last generation for not having games. No, if you buy a Series X, there is a game that you can look forward to. You know, that you have, uh, Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6, all the various Bethesda games. You got all the various studios that they've bought in. Um, what's the Senua's Sacrifice or whatever, the sequel to that, that's
Hmm.
going to be their next big IP as well. So maybe this is just Microsoft forcing them to show something. But I was like, kind of rub salt in the wounds a little bit, because I expected to see a lot more than what they showed, especially if this is distracting them from a game that people actually want to see them come out with. So
Well, I know this is probably their second last chance to show people what they release is not an open, overwhelmingly buggy mess of a game.
Hmm.
Fallout 4 came out the door like this. Fallout 76 came out the door. Like those bugs were carrying the game in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
Skyrim couldn't even be beaten on the PS3 for like 6 months. Like you couldn't even beat the game. It was so buggy.
I mean, they really need to show that like they are listening to their QA team and knocking out every bug they can. Now it's an open world game; you can't get all of them. Obviously, people are going to discover certain ones, but you can't have a game that is so buggy that it would come off as incomplete.
Right.
And that was the case for Skyrim, even also. Like you just said, you couldn't beat it on the PS3, and they released it like that.
Yeah.
And there's so many bugs you can find even to this day on Skyrim, and it's just absolutely insane. Even in like the re-releases and remasters they've done of Skyrim, it's just I like either their QA team's really bad or they just straight up don't listen to them.
Yeah. You can't you I don't think you could get away with Skyrim's release today. You know, given what the reaction to Cyberpunk, which was especially bad, but the idea, like, can you imagine how many YouTube videos would pop up if the next Elder Scrolls game came out and it was like, yeah, you can't even beat the game. Like it's
No.
impossible. You
Yeah.
know, like it would be bad. But on Starfield, look, I'm excited. I like science fiction based games. I just, I want something else from Bethesda and they're not doing it. And it's because they're creating their new IP and I we didn't see anything. Like it's
Yeah.
like I'm
Yeah.
not happy with the progress.
Yeah. Elder Scrolls 6 being put on the back burner for this game might be acceptable if we had some concept of what this game is or how it plays or whatever, but we didn't get anything. We just got
Yeah.
a release date trailer for we don't know what it is. So it's
And it boggles my
mm,
mind because Skyrim was like massively successful. Like what
mhm.
you'd think you'd want to follow up on that, but it's been like 10 years. I mean, they made the online game, but people want a single player game, you know?
I hear the ESO is really good to get into if you're a major Elder Scrolls fan.
Mm.
Like you go to areas from the older games like Daggerfall,
Hmm.
Morrowind,
Yeah.
Skyrim, and if you're a lore nut there, they will treat you well there. But I hear the combat's pretty bad, so
Yeah. I want an actual
give or take.
release. I don't want the online game. I understand that it came out bad and they fixed a lot of issues, but I want an actual release. And so I think it's been way too long. It's ridiculous that it's been that long. In between Oblivion and Skyrim was what, 4 years, something like that. So 10 years and they're still years away is ridiculous. So anyways, that's not Starfield's fault necessarily, but I'm hoping that they show some more, but I was unhappy personally with what they showed. It was a little disappointing. On
Yeah.
that note, though, the Outer Worlds 2 trailer that we talk about here next, in the trailer, they show this big cinematic trailer with no gameplay, and the person narrating the trailer is joking about the fact that there's nothing being shown. And it's hilarious because it starts off with him saying like in a quiet field with beautiful cinematics or something like it makes the game seem important. Then we cut to random people running with bullets for no reason, you know? And it's just like joking about the fact that this is not actual gameplay and the game is not coming out ever. This creature that you see here will not actually be in the final game. It's just like going through like all these things. And then they're like, this game will come out eventually, Outer Worlds 2. And it maybe because, they were also purchased by Microsoft. Maybe they also had their hand forced to create a trailer. And so they said, okay, fine, we'll kind of push it back in their face. But it was kind of funny because this trailer is exactly what Starfield's trailer was. You know,
Yeah.
a big mesh of nonsense for no reason. So it's kind of a cool way of sticking it to the man.
Well, the first game was fun, so and it was simple to the point. It wasn't like you know, an overwhelming experience. It was a nice contained short experience. They were kind of stretching it when they said it was a game with a lot of hours to put into. It really wasn't.
Yep.
Hmm.
But it was fun for what it was. So
Yeah.
uh hopefully the second game is
Even better.
even better. Yeah.
Yep. So we'll have to
Not much to say beyond that.
see for Outer Worlds 2. So, okay, moving on. We're going to start going through these a little bit quicker because these are kind of ones we're kind of iffy on. But Fallout 76 Steel Rain, this is DLC for Fallout 76. I'm surprised they're still supporting this game because it's been just a complete nightmare for the company. But I think it's cool they're hell-bent on trying to fix it to some extent. And so they have DLC coming out for Fallout 76. I don't think any of us care. I don't think most of our audience cares. But if that interests you, you guys can go look that up and check that out.
I'll tell you this: almost every online game out there, like really bad or really good, at least has its small subset base,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
maybe
there's hardcore people playing Anthem that are like, no, this game's great. These
uh,
Christmas decorations that have been up for 2 years, it's part of the world's lore.
then oh man, did they? I thought they shut that down.
I don't know. Did they?
Oh man,
I think they announced. Yeah,
maybe.
I think they. You're right. They did announce that they're coming up, but there was like a hardcore following of people that were like really sticking
Oh,
with it.
yeah.
So
I mean, to be fair, there were. I was one of them in Final Fantasy 14 1.0. I was telling them, "Oh man, the game's going to get better. The game's going to get better." It did. They had to kill the old one, took it out in the
they
back like old Yeller, um,
just made a
but they did.
new game.
So
Yeah. So
I
maybe
don't
that's what.
think 76 is going that route though.
Yeah, maybe that's what they should have done with 76. So, anyways, there's new DLC coming out for it, and if you want to check it out, you know, feel free. We're just not gonna partake in that. Elder Scrolls Online, new DLCs coming out. I'm not sure about the context of the DLC because I'm not really playing Elder Scrolls Online to be honest, but they've also released the enhanced next gen console version of Elder Scrolls Online. You can go watch a trailer online. It looks really good. It looks a lot better. So I think that's really cool that they've upped the visuals. And yeah, if you're interested in playing the game, it's going to look a lot better.
Yeah, like I said before, it's one of the better online games out there. Definitely for sure. They've improved a lot of things over time. I would say this mostly caters to people who are fans of the Elder Scrolls series because besides that, the quests, um, from what I hear, are pretty okay, and the combat is still not greatly improved. It's basically for the most part using combat from like Elder Scroll offline games,
Mm,
and it doesn't translate as well to online, especially when you're playing with other people to take it down. So there isn't really kind of a symmetry to it. Someone who plays the game can correct me if not, but when I experienced it, that's kind of how it felt. So it's like if you want to be part of the Elder Scrolls world as a whole, this is a really good way to experience that. But if you're not really interested in the Elder Scrolls world, I would probably pass on it.
yep. Yep. That's what I've heard. So it's there if it wants to tide you over, but if you're not that interested in it, then and in the lore and in the world itself, then there's not real big reason to. Diablo 2 Resurrected. So this was announced at BlizzCon's 2021. However, we actually got a release date now. So this is basically a remake of Diablo 2 or a graphical update, I should say. But it's coming out on September 23rd to all platforms. And it's going to have completely redone graphics, There's going to be multiplayer via the battle.net service, and then there's going to be cross progression, so you can check your progress wherever you play. So if you own the game on multiple platforms, you can kind of take it with you and play on all these different places. So that's obviously pretty cool. If you look at the trailer itself, it is a clear upgrade. I mean, Diablo 2 is a pretty old game by now, and so I do think it looks a lot better. I'm surprised this hasn't been done in the past. I
Yeah,
would have,
Diablo 2 is pretty much a 20-year-old game.
yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do this like 10 years ago. But cool. I'm glad it exists. I'm not unhappy that it exists. And I'll definitely pick it up at some point.
I will say that I'm excited for it, but I was also excited for the Warcraft 3 remaster, and a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
bad things happened.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of
That's
like excited, but I'm also whoa, hold your horses. Let's see what happens. And if Blizzard does what they're supposed to make this a good faithful HD remaster, then yes, I will absolutely play it because I loved Diablo 2. That game was so good when I played it way back then.
yeah.
I think that is probably one of the games that got me into Western PC RPGs.
Yeah.
I think that was probably one of the gateway games for me.
Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah, I hope they do it right, and if they do, you will see me on there.
Yeah. Apparently they've made a point to say, hey, a lot of the upgrades that we did were visual. The gameplay we're not jacking with. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty much in the same boat as Eric. I'm looking at it. It looks impressive, but I've got the archetypal shoulder angels, and one of them is classic Blizzard, right? Uh, Trying to get me to pre-order the game, and the other is modern Blizzard, who is like, remember what the company's been doing lately. Yeah, so
I just want to know when the phone version's coming out because I do own a phone.
I think they're being very careful with that now. I think they realize that their target audience isn't impressed with that. So I think I think probably near a release, they're probably going to say something again. I'm not saying a game like that shouldn't exist, Diablo Immortal,
Yeah.
but man, it was such the wrong place and the wrong time to announce it.
If
Like
y'all,
if they announced Diablo 4 and be like, hey, this game is in the works. We're definitely working on it. Don't worry about it. Here's a trailer for it. But in the meantime, we do also have this new Diablo game we're making for mobile, which they should have also made for PC, make it a PC mobile crossover. That would have satisfied both people to an extent and be like, hey, you can play on mobile if you want and has controller support and stuff like that. I mean, to hold you over till Diablo 4, people either would have not cared or just be like, okay, it is what it is.
yeah.
Man, we got Diablo 4 coming, but they didn't announce Diablo 4 before then. So everyone's like, is this some kind of like April Fool's joke?
So
Oh, so great.
for those that are uncertain what Eric is talking about, we covered on this podcast, but maybe a year or 2 years ago, they were announcing the next Diablo game, and a bunch of people flew out to the BlizzCon presentation because they were expecting the next Diablo game to be announced, and it was a mobile game. It was a mobile Diablo game, Diablo Immortal, and people were freaking pissed. And they took questions from the audience, and the audience was asking them questions that were very rude in their tenor, like, "Is this a joke?" and things like that. And one of the developers just got frustrated and yelled at the audience and said, "You guys own phones, don't you? What's the big deal?" or something like that. And
Don't you
like,
guys have phones?
yeah, and like he got booed off the stage, and it was
Oof.
just it was really bad, and it was like memes and stuff. So, you know, I agree with you, Eric. I think they've hopefully learned at least to focus on the console version, the PC version, at least.
No, they remembered who their audience is when they pay tickets and fly to your area to see what you have. Yeah, you kind of learned that they're probably not mobile players.
Right, exactly. All right, so that was the Microsoft and Bethesda event. I think we pretty much covered the RPGs there. It was a pretty good show. It was just a lot of stuff that was they didn't really show anything new, or it was kind of like CG cutscenes. We're talking about RPGs here. So there wasn't a lot of exciting announcements for RPGs, really. I would say probably the biggest thing that I saw there that I found exciting was that there will be an Outer Worlds 2. And I enjoyed the trailer and that they kind of made fun of all these other trailers that were trying to make their cinematic only trailer seem exciting. It was a kind of a nice commentary on the industry. And then also Diablo 2 Resurrected, that's pretty cool. I like that, but that was already announced, but we got a release date. So that's pretty cool as well. But outside of that, I mean, I was expecting a little bit more from Microsoft, especially with their Bethesda acquisition and, you know, all those other studios as well. But they did have some other cool announcements that were not RPGs. So I do think they had an overall good show.
I think the only game that really shook up RPG wise was Elden Rings. And that was a game we already knew existed, but we actually got to see the game. And that's what it kind of similar to FF7 Remake. Everyone's predicting what it's going to be and trying to find any leaks they possibly can. And
Yeah.
now we know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, granted, we didn't wait anywhere near as long, but
Yep.
The concept is still the same. The bubble has finally been bursted. So
now we know.
That's exciting in itself, but there was nothing that was like announced and we're just screaming like, "Oh my god, this game is happening! What is going on?" and crap like that. No, nothing.
Yeah.
It's stuff we already know that's going to happen. Now, I did have a little moment like that, but it wasn't for an RPG. It was for Metroid Dread, Metroid 5. That made me happy.
Yeah, you were one of those.
That was the most exciting thing for me throughout the whole E3.
I
But it's
know.
not an RPG, so I won't dive into it. I'll just say I was very excited when I saw that.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, if you guys watched the stream, I jumped out of my chair for that Guardians of the Galaxy presentation.
Mm.
I was very happy that it took almost the majority of the entire Square Enix presentation. I was very happy that, you know, they didn't spend time, you know, wasting our time with stuff like Final Fantasy 16. You know, instead I got to see this other game that I didn't care about. Thought it was great. Anyways, enough with my dumb jokes. Ubisoft for just what I thought was a terrible showing. They had Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, which was not a terrible showing. I thought overall the show itself was terrible, but Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. This is obviously based on the 2009 film, so was initially announced as the Avatar project in 2017. They didn't really show anything, but they announced its existence. They didn't really hear anything since then, so many people assumed it was canceled. So its appearance here was a surprise showing to a lot of people. This game is now coming in 2022. So we've got kind of a release window or a release year. And like I said before, it's based on a 2009 film, but it's going to feature its own standalone story and a part of the planet, which is called Pandora, if you don't remember. But it's going to be in a part of Pandora that we have not seen yet in the movies, or movie, I should say. It uses the Ubisoft Teardrop engine. So they said they had to overhaul this engine in order to push the visuals for this game, which also allowed them to include other nuanced details like NPCs will also be aware of weather and time of day due to changes with the engine. So that's pretty cool. In terms of gameplay, all we really know is it's an open world adventure game. Given Ubisoft has made the Far Cry series, which is an open world adventure game with very light RPG elements, it's possible that this game may not even cross that RPG threshold. But most professional journalists are expecting it to be an open world RPG. That's most of where the discussion is at, that it's going to be an RPG. So right now we know it's going to be on the PS5, Xbox Series X, PC, Stadia, and Amazon's upcoming cloud service called Luna, which no one will buy or play this game on, but it will be available on there. So I'm pretty sure Amazon had to pay for that. So yeah, I mean, guys, I liked the 2009 movie. I'm one of those people. I liked the Avatar movie. I know it became kind of a meme to not like it after a while, but I thought it was a great movie when it came out. And it's just crazy to think that, you know, this game was not even like an idea in anyone's head at Ubisoft back when that movie announced, but we knew back then there was going to be a sequel to the Avatar movie, and now this game is almost released, and we still haven't gotten the sequels to Avatar yet. It's been like 12 years, and like an entire game has been created.
Something makes me think there's going to be an Avatar sequel
Well,
Oh,
released
yeah.
sometime around the game.
here's the thing.
Yeah.
So James Cameron, the mastermind behind this, right? Not the game, the movies. He is filming 4 movies sequels back to back, right? So he said they filmed like all the movies already, right? But the first sequel is supposed to come out in 2014, and he continually has pushed it back like every 2 years. But apparently now that Disney owns it, like like they're like putting their foot down. Like it's coming out December 2022. So this game's coming out in 2022. So obviously,
It's a tie-in.
they're going to support each other.
Yeah.
So I think Eric, you're right about that. The only thing I don't know is like how much of a license do they have with this game? Because we only saw that one game or that one movie. So there's a lot of lore there that's not been explored. And given this is going to be an open world game, are they doing like the Knights of the Old Republic treatment where we're going back 1,000 years prior and therefore they can make their own story and they can do whatever they want? Or is James Cameron like involved with like the construction of this world to make sure that they're not going to have some asinine thing in the game that conflicts with the movies? Or is it just going to be its own separate like timeline that kind of diverges a little bit and like that's it?
I'm sure at the very least they're given a set of rules. Like,
Yeah, but if you're
I'm
doing an
not sure.
open
I'm not
world
sure.
RPG, like you're going to have possibly hundreds of monsters, you're going to have villages, you're going to have cultures and traditions. I mean,
Yeah, I wonder if that's what has delayed this game so long, because it was announced in 2017, right? Or like soft announced.
maybe because the movies were supposed to come out earlier. Maybe
Yeah, and
that's
the movies are taking so long to develop. They may be like collaborating with them on like the creature designs and like the environments and stuff. And so as that development of the movie has slowed down, it's also hindered their workflow of the game, possibly. Or maybe they just had to delay it at some point until the filmmakers could send them some kind of finalized artwork or assets or something that they could use. So
yeah.
I'm
I
just
mean,
speculating. That could be completely untrue. I don't know.
I just think that like it's the only way to do it is to just have the ability to tell your own story and just
Which it is doing. It's not trying to recap any events of the films, right?
yeah. But I mean, take tremendous liberties like with just understanding
Mm,
that okay, this this might be the tradition of these people in our game, but in the movies they might go a different direction,
mm,
and that might not be the case, and they're just going to have to exist as similar properties, but not the same thing, you know.
right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, my overall interest in the game is assuming it comes out in the around the same time as this movie sequel. I'm sure I'm going to end up seeing the movie sequel,
Dude,
just
I want to
because
see it day one.
the first
I'm
one
ready.
was the first one was like such a phenomenon when it came out, and like it was really one of the first films to take advantage of like um the 3D glasses, which became kind of a fad, I think, in the
Well, and the
s-
mo
s-
the motion capture, right? Because they
yeah.
they actually used real actors, and like when the actor would squint, like the CG model would squint, and so a lot of people
Yeah.
thought the faces were just like really well designed masks or something like that. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. The, yeah, I was like really amazed when I first saw the movie. It was the subsequent viewings that you realize the plot is kind of like very basic, and the villains are kind of like cliche, like twirly mustache kind of, no, screw the indigenous people, I need money, it's like
Dude, I like it. I remember there's a scene in The Office where like the guys, the CEO guys being told that they have to pull the operation up because these people's tradition, and he's just like, it's an effing tree. Like, I'm just like, that's actually probably what somebody would say. It's an effing tree. Like, I'm not closing operations because of an effing tree. Like,
Yeah.
so there's some good moments, but yeah, it was kind of like we've seen this before.
Yes, it's very done before. Yeah, like you said, it's storytelling wise, the movie didn't do anything like brilliant, but
Yeah.
it was for the at the time the technology was really amazing, and that's why it made so much money and why there's going to be sequels to it. So it really depends on how well this sequel movie comes out, and like if I'm become interested in this world anymore. I think.
Well, I think the world itself from the movie seems like it would be a perfect place to have an RPG, though. I mean, you're on a foreign planet with all these new creatures and all the like villages and like different landscapes to explore. I mean, it seems like would be a good canvas for a game.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Eric, does this appeal to you at all? Or you're not you're not ready for Pandora?
I mean, it was an all right movie. Not my favorite James Cameron.
Well,
I
there's
mean,
four
I would
sequels coming.
even rate Titanic above it
Well, I mean,
in
come
terms
on.
of James Cameron movies, but with Terminator 2 on top.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. I don't mind his existence. It just I don't care
What
about
about
it.
this? What about this game? Is just because you're not interested in the movie that's kind of flowing over into the game as well for you?
No.
Okay.
um if there's some gameplay element that's like it's a must that you must play it. It's such a new and evolutionary thing to open world RPGs. That'd be like, okay, maybe. But no. The movie I didn't care for. I mean, it was a decent movie and it was technically spectacular, but like you guys said, story wise, I didn't care about it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
pretty much
as
close
a
to what I was
oh,
saying. Yeah.
I got you. So as a game, it's not going to appeal to you either unless it comes out and starts getting great
Yeah.
reviews or like you said, revolutionize the open world format or something like that.
The only thing I wanted to hear from Ubisoft was Beyond Good and Evil 2, and of course, like every year before it, I am always disappointed. They had the one year where they were showing it off like crazy, like the game's near ready to come out, with all these previews and gameplay and like how they're getting like these integrating with these like music artists together to uh create like randomly generated signboards and stuff within the game or something like that with Joseph Gordon Levitt, I think the name is. Um, and we haven't heard anything since.
Yeah. What happened to it?
Yeah. So there was, I think someone said there might be a 2023 release of it, but I haven't seen it. So
Yeah, this E3 summer was kind of anticlimactic. I mean, there was some good announcements, but I would have thought with all these companies having planned on having an E3 presentation last year and then E3 being, canceled because of COVID, I would have thought, oh, okay, this year there would be even more announcements
They're just
because
gonna come
all
out
of last
swinging.
year's
Yeah.
announcements are still in the can. And then you must have something additional this year. And the stuff that was last year would have even more to show. But there wasn't really like I mean, there was some good stuff, but nothing really big. I mean, the Sony didn't really take part this year or in 2019, but the Horizon Forbidden West gameplay reveal, that was kind of like
Mm.
their E3, that and Ratchet and Clank. And I mean, that was some good stuff right there. So I think right now that's pretty much the highlight for me from what I've seen this summer. I mean, I think that Nintendo has some decent stuff coming out for us to be excited about. We have, like I said, SMT5 coming out this year. We've got Monster Hunter Stories coming out. I mean, we have Tales of Arise, which isn't Nintendo, but that's coming out on console and PC to be excited about. So we do have stuff to be excited about this year, but not as big as I was expecting. I was entirely expecting there to be a lot bigger announcements this year, to be honest. But
Yeah, like Eric said, it was more like release dates and just more information on some of the games that we already knew were in development. So
right,
there wasn't like a blockbuster or, kind of Elden Ring type of announcement this year, that just
No
like
2005 Twilight Princess announcement. YouTube that if you haven't seen it, one of the greatest videos on there. You've seen people so excited for a game. I
Yeah.
think that and Final Fantasy VII Remake are probably like the most hysterical ones I've ever heard.
yeah.
Yeah, nothing like that this year. Nothing that blew anybody away.
So it just makes you wonder, what would they have shown last year if we
Hmm.
had had E3,
I think if what happened didn't happen, I think a lot of games would be being released earlier.
True.
Yeah, but you would have to think like COVID really wasn't a thing until like March last year or February, and different parts of the world maybe a little earlier. So by January, I would have thought they would have had in the can what they were going to show at E3 last year, because E3 wasn't canceled till like April.
Yeah, it's hard to know in that kind of hypothetical situation because also there's just so many companies that are wanting to have some announcements around E3 time, but reveal the new big games just like on a random Tuesday. Like the next Assassin's Creed game, like or whatever. They don't really use the E3 time slot to announce those big
Right.
AAA games anymore.
They'll show some
They'll
gameplay, stuff like
yeah,
that.
they'll announce it and get everybody talking some random week so that it dominates the news headline for that week. And
Gotcha.
then use a show like E3 or Gamescom or Tokyo Game Show or something to provide updates and more information about the game. So, yeah.
Well, maybe next year. I mean, all I gotta say is I watched Jeff Keighley's Summerfest, and this was supposed to be like a new and upcoming competition for E3. And while it did have Elden Ring, it did have Tales of Arise, did have Metal Slug Tactics. There's some good announcements in there. E3 has nothing to worry about.
Jeff Keighley, is there anything I can tell you? It is read your audience.
Mhm.
The band Weezer
He
is
just
fine.
he reads himself in a mirror. That's what he does.
I mean, I like the band Weezer just fine.
I don't, but
And but you are presenting yourself to gamers, and all they want is to hear that next announcement of the next game. And all they see when you play Green Day or you play Weezer and stuff like that is, can we get this over with so I can see the next announcement? That's how it is. It's not anything against the people who are playing. And the idea on paper sounds nice, but that's the only thing that's going through 99% of your audience watching.
if you're gonna
Yeah.
have a band there, don't. But if you're going to do it, like it needs to be like A level band. Like, okay, if you had like Metallica there or something, or like some like huge band, if you had, I don't know, somebody even popular right now, like Billie Eilish or something, or whatever the hell her name is, or something like that's really trendy right now, but not like an alternative rock band from like 2003. Like it's just no, just cut that out and just show us something else. You
Yeah,
know?
it reeks of kind of a like they want the show to be like mainstream, but at the same time they didn't have the budget to bring in somebody who's like really popular or relevant in 2021 or 2020, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you're going for this kind of, you want your show to appeal more to like a broader pop culture kind of audience, but then you bring in bands from the 90s or early 2000s.
Like next year, they're gonna have like Jerry Seinfeld doing stand up for 5 minutes. It's like,
I think
okay,
this
I
is how you
guess.
do it. Like the orchestra people that they bring on, what
Oh
you
yeah.
need to do, like if it's like a sequel to a game everyone's been waiting for, get like the orchestra to play music from the games before, and then give like people a hint and be like, what songs are they playing? Oh my god, are these songs from this game? Like, are they doing what I think they're doing? And after the orchestra's done going through like the series of songs, then they announce a trailer for that game, like a sequel to that game.
Mm.
Like that's how you get people excited through that. Like and then in like heavy anticipation. When you bring like these bands in, all you're just like is like, okay, how long was this song again? Dear God, 4 minutes and 46 seconds. God,
Yeah. And the on demand culture that we live in, right? I have Spotify, I have YouTube. I can listen to any song that I want at any time. And if that song came on my playlist, I would skip it because I don't like that song. So
it's a,
forcing me to listen to it is agonizing.
but Jeff Keighley, it's not you either. Remember when Sony put everyone in a barn for The Last of Us 2
Yeah.
and they had to listen to the guy play the banjo and no one there was like, I want to be here.
Yeah.
I just want to see the game. And then like Ghost of Tsushima, they had someone playing I forgot what
Some
instrument
kind
they
of
were
flute
playing.
or something. Yeah.
There was some kind of flute, yeah. And then everyone's like in the back, get to the gameplay.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like we don't want to listen to this guy play. It's like, look, it sounds nice. You're good at playing an instrument, but we're not here for you. We're here to watch video games.
Yeah.
That's all we want. We want announcement trailers. Like we've been anticipating new games coming out. We want to hear. You are nothing but a delay to us.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
I'll go to
Exactly.
a Green Day concert if I want to listen to Green Day.
Exactly. Totally agree. Totally agree. So hopefully Jeff, you know, he takes his guidance from our podcast 2.5 hours in, and you know,
Yeah,
He's
less than
not.
1K, or less than 1K sub, and then you'll get in the comment from him like, "Listen here, you little shit."
well, hey man, this is good advice. So he better take it and apply it because I'm getting really fatigued with his shows. Whenever I watch them, I'm just like, this was a complete mistake. But he's all honestly, he usually when he creates shows, he usually has at least one or two worthwhile announcements, and that's what pains me because I just have to like sit through this god awful, just horrific show for
Really?
like those one or two announcements.
Really, what I think it is, I think he has a team of people, and these team of people convince him that you need these bands on here or something, and he says yes to it.
I think they're
And
bands
like,
that he likes, and like he just doesn't think about anyone else.
like I don't know. It's
Anyways, so
yeah.
so E3 will be safe next year because there's not a lot of competition. But anyways, so I think overall this year was okay. It was exciting to get back into the groove of things after this whole COVID situation. A little disappointed with some of the announcements, but I'm looking forward to next year. I think next year is going to be the year where we really start seeing some stuff. Hopefully we might get some more Final Fantasy stuff next year. Maybe some actual gameplay, some release dates as well. So should be exciting next year. Maybe a Switch Pro with that Breath of the Wild 2. So it came and went. All right. So I think that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Next week, I will be out of town. I'll be on vacation visiting some friends from when I was in the military. So we may have an episode next week. I won't be there. Eric and Stan are kind of talking about maybe depends on what's available. They might stream it or something, but I'm sure they'll let you know. If you don't see an episode next week, we will have one the following week. But until then, we appreciate you all listening and checking us out, and we will see you then. Take it easy.
Take care.
All right. See you next time.
Hey, thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And also, check out our audio version. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and practically any podcatcher you can think of. Also, we have a fantastic media partner at RPGFan.com. Be sure to go check them out for your latest RPG reviews and news, as well as some other kick-ass podcasts with Rhythm Encounter, Retro Encounter, and Random Encounter. Go check them out. We'll see you next time.